You know, in the wild world of AI, a whole new battlefront has just opened up. Today, we're diving into India's incredibly ambitious and pretty aggressive new plan to fight the growing threat of deepfakes. And trust me, this could change how the internet is regulated everywhere.
Just imagine this for a second. A video of a super famous CEO suddenly goes viral. They're announcing their company is completely bankrupt. It looks real, it sounds real, but it's not. Before anyone even has a chance to check the facts, panic kicks in, stocks absolutely plummet, and people's life savings are just wiped out.
And look, this isn't some plot from a sci-fi movie anymore. This is a very real, very scary threat that governments are now scrambling to get a handle on. So how do you even begin to regulate something this chaotic? Well, India thinks it has the answer, and it's a rulebook that could have massive ripple effects across the globe.
All right, so let's get into it. What is the big deal here? To really understand why India is taking such drastic steps, we first need to get our heads around the full scope of this deepfake problem. I mean, the dangers here are really widespread, and they can get super personal. We're talking about everything from sophisticated financial scams that use cloned voices to the horrifying creation of fake, intimate images used to harass and abuse people. This tech can be weaponized to sway elections, completely destroy reputations, and cause just immense harm.
So, in response to all this, the Indian government has amended its IT rules. And these new regulations, which are set to kick in February 2026, are all about one thing: making the huge digital platforms that host this stuff, you know who I'm talking about, finally accountable.
Okay, so at the very heart of this new law is a brand new term you're going to hear a lot: synthetically generated information. This is the official government speak for any content created or tweaked by AI that's designed to look and sound totally real, even when it's a complete fabrication.
So what does that actually mean in the real world? Well, think about a deepfake video of a politician saying something they never, ever said. Or a scam call that uses a cloned voice to sound like your bank. Or even just a hyper-realistic AI image of a celebrity. But, and this is a really crucial point, your everyday photo edits, like changing the brightness or slapping on a filter for Instagram, that's not included. This is aimed squarely at deceptive, AI-driven creations that are meant to fool you.
Okay, so how is all this going to work in practice? Well, the new rules are forcing two gigantic changes on social media platforms. We're talking incredibly fast takedown times and labels on everything.
To really get why this is such a huge deal, you got to look at how things used to be. Before, platforms had a full 36 hours to take down illegal content. In the age of viral content, that's basically an eternity. A piece of misinformation could circle the globe a dozen times in 36 hours.
Okay, you ready for this? That 36-hour window, it's been slashed to just 3 hours for most AI content. When a valid takedown order lands, platforms have to move and move fast.
And for the absolute worst stuff, we're talking about those awful, non-consensual new deepfakes, the deadline is even tighter, just 2 hours. The message here is crystal clear. The more harmful the content, the faster you better get it down.
The other massive piece of this puzzle is transparency. Platforms just can't sit back anymore. They have to proactively ask users if their post is AI-made, they have to use their own tools to try and detect it, and they have to clearly label anything that is. The goal is simple. No one should ever be tricked by a deepfake again just because they didn't know it was one.
This all leads us to the multi-billion-dollar question, right? Legal responsibility. What's at stake for companies like YouTube, Instagram, and X? Well, it all comes down to a legal idea called safe harbor.
Think of safe harbor as a legal shield. It's what protects platforms from getting sued over the crazy stuff their users upload. It treats them like a neutral middleman, not a publisher, as long as they play by certain rules.
So, under these new rules, keeping that shield, well, it's not a guarantee anymore. It's pretty simple, really. If platforms follow the new rules, labeling AI content, yanking harmful stuff within those crazy tight deadlines, they keep their shield. But if they fail, they lose that protection and can be held legally responsible for the content, just like a newspaper or a TV network would be.
But, and this is a big but, there's also something in here to encourage platforms to act fast without being terrified of making a mistake. If they quickly remove a piece of content because they think it's harmful, they're legally protected even if it turns out to be a mistake. This stops them from getting punished for being too careful.
And like with any big rule change like this, you run into a classic fundamental tension. How do you protect people from very real harm without accidentally squashing legitimate free speech?
On the one hand, the upsides are pretty clear.
This could protect people's privacy and dignity, stop viral misinformation in its tracks, and fight financial fraud. But on the other hand, and you can see where this is going, there are some really valid concerns. Critics worry that these super short deadlines might force platforms to just take stuff down first and ask questions later, which could mean that satire, parody, or even legitimate news gets caught in the crossfire.
So to stop this power from being misused, the rules get really specific about who gets to issue a takedown order. It can't just be anybody. It has to be a pretty high-ranking government official or police officer. Plus, there's a monthly review process built in, which acts as a check and balance on all these orders.
All right, so let's just do a quick recap. The shift is, well, it's dramatic. Takedown times plummet from 36 hours to as little as 3 or even 2. AI labeling goes from nice to have to absolutely mandatory. And that all-important legal shield, safe harbor, it's not a given anymore. It's now conditional. This is a complete overhaul of the rules of the game.
When you boil it all down, this legislation is one of the world's most aggressive responses to generative AI. It's a really clear signal that the era of platforms just kind of reacting to problems after they've exploded is over. Now they're being forced to get ahead of it.
And that really leaves all of us with the one question that's going to define the internet for the next decade. Is it actually possible to build a digital world that's safe from the harms of AI without sacrificing the freedom and creativity that makes the internet so valuable in the first place? That is the incredibly tricky balance that India and, frankly, the rest of the world is now trying to find.